This is from NPR. Trump signs executive order to pause TikTok ban, provide immunity to tech firms. I will say, as of right now, Google Play has still banned the TikTok app, so you can't download it. The app is still available. NPR reports President Trump signed an executive order Monday seeking to hit pause on the law banning TikTok and provide a liability shield to business partners on the popular video app. According to the order, the law will be paused for 75 days, and companies that work with TikTok will not be liable for doing so. Right off the bat, I don't believe that the president has the authority to do that.
No, it's illegal.
Yeah, so simply declaring that there will be no liability for third parties in violation of the law, I don't think he can do that. I believe he can instruct law enforcement not to seek restitution, but that liability will be on the books. Aside from that, I'm curious, Congressman, what your thoughts are on the TikTok ban and if you support or oppose it.
I oppose the ban. I've actually been going viral on TikTok. It's 1.4 million petition signatures in 48 hours to oppose this ban. I give President Trump credit for this. I mean, the real threat that China poses is a $1 trillion trade surplus they have compared to our trade deficit. They've taken a lot of our jobs. They're building more steel. They're building more ships. And so there are ways of protecting data without suppressing the speech. We're talking about being groupthink. I mean, TikTok has a lot of unconventional opinions on the left and the right. I was calling for President Biden to do this pause. I'm glad that Trump has.
But with 170 million users in the United States, if TikTok decides to push an algorithm that creates a 51% weight towards supporting China taking our jobs, that's going to affect an entire generation where they're going to vote on behalf of Chinese interests.
Well, I'm opposed to, we can have a law that says you go to jail if you're an executive of a company here and there's any evidence, a shred of evidence of algorithmic interference by the CCP or a foreign adversary. Or if you're any company, data brokers or social media, and you sell or transfer any of Americans' data to the CCP. But I think singling out TikTok with 170 million Americans was a mistake. And I also think I have a lot of confidence. People say, well, China bans the apps. Yeah, I'd rather that they have our apps in there. And Elon just tweeted out about, why can't you get X into China? Let's get Facebook into China. Let's not have TikTok banned in China. But you know what? We're better than China in terms of our political system. And I think I have a lot of confidence in the wisdom of the American people. This is why I tell my own party that, let's spend as much time figuring out why people were drawn to Trump as criticizing Trump. Like there's a wisdom in the American people, even if they don't always get it right. And I trust the free speech of this country to get the right solution.
Does the CCP not have an influence over the algorithm, though? And do we have anything to do with that influence at all? Like, how would we figure out if they are influencing it?
Well, how would we even investigate that? It's a foreign country.
How would we investigate?
Well, it's a domestic subsidiary. We could have the subpoena, the CEO. We could have a law that says you need to ensure that the TikTok operational in the United States is not going to have any connection to the CCP. I will say
that's impossible. Well, I mean, that's basically what this bill is, to be honest.
No, but this bill is saying
forcing divestiture.
It's forcing divestiture, and there's no evidence in the public record because everyone is saying they can go on the public record. There's no evidence that the CCP has either gotten a significant amount of American data or that the CCP is telling TikTok, hey, let's make sure that there's suppression of Tibet or the Uyghurs.
There is evidence of that.
No, yeah.
The Axios report, which kicked this off, we talked about this the other day, was that shortly after October 7th, with 123,000 posts, Stand With Palestine, there were only 11 million views, but within the span of only a few days, it jumped to 285 million views with 87,000 posts. A lesser amount of posts, some 26 times the amount of views, was indicative of an algorithmic change to promote pro-Palestine content.
But there are also a lot of young people who were pro-Palestine.
Except when October 7th happened and there were 123,000 posts, nobody cared to watch it. It was only getting 11 million views. So in my experience with social media, having worked in this industry and built a company based around this, I can look at an influencer and I can tell you if they're botting and if it's fake. I, along with many others, saw that data and instantly said, oh, that looks like an algorithm switch intentionally done by TikTok. Now, I'm not saying pro-Palestine, pro-Israel. That's not the point I'm making. I'm just saying that it looks like, as it pertains to a major component of U.S. foreign policy, TikTok made a decision.
Well, and TikTok has also been promoting the sorts of causes that divide Americans more and that tend to enrich China.
Which, well, and beyond that, just the division is often the point of any of foreign countries meddling in the United States. Having the United States being divided and bickering with each other is good for China. It's good for Russia. It's good for our international rivals. Whereas having the United States generally on the same page is bad for them.
Sure, but I'm not sure TikTok is doing more than X in terms of the division. But look,
but we have recourse against X. And American companies we can sue, we can subpoena, we can FOIA from
and we have
government
recourse
connections.
against TikTok. Is U.S. They were doing the Texas project where they were keeping the data. And my sense is if Trump has a resolution to this, he's going to insist on enough American ownership. It's already 60% American investors, and he's going to insist on some mechanism that if there is evidence or any sense of suspicion that there is algorithmic interference from the Chinese party, that those folks could have criminal
So
do you-
long
real
as
quick, do you-
China has the ultimate authority over ByteDance and can claim any data, that we don't have the buck doesn't stop with us, it stops with them.
Yeah, I don't think the storage really has any influence in that, does it?
Well, if they're
it's
keeping
completely
it with
separate thing
Oracle.
from the algorithm, isn't it? I mean, Oracle doesn't call the shots on the algorithmic changes. On
No,
the
there are
app.
two different issues.
Right.
One is the concern about data that I think can be managed with Texas
Easier.
It
It seems.
easier. And the other is on the algorithmic interference, which is to say that you have to you can have an affidavit, but for TikTok's folks to say that their algorithm going forward is not going to have any changes recommended by anyone in the Chinese Communist Party. Now,
But then they could just do bad things
I guess I would
outside
just
of the Chinese
I
Communist
would just
Party.
trust them as far as you can throw them at that.
there are a lot of them are Americans or not or American. They're not. It's not like Chinese communist officials are running TikTok. I mean, the guy's a Singaporean.
No, but don't they
you know.
have complete access to it if they want? So if they want
Yeah,
to snap their
they do.
fingers and say, I have access to this algorithm, they do.
And they're required under the law in China to provide the data for their use.
That's right.
But they don't have the ability to demand a change in the algorithm. And if the U.S.
They do.
If the U.S. made it a condition that it's a crime here, then TikTok would have to shut
What's
down.
your evidence that they don't have that authority? To
or
demand
they
a change in the algorithm?
or if they do, we can make it criminal that for a U.S. executive to submit to that change.
But how do you prove that?
But regardless,
then you have to
hold on,
subpoena
hold on.
every
Right.
algorithm.
I just don't understand in any capacity why we are saying, yes, China can have a mass media operation to 170 million people in the U.S. There's no argument for it.
But I don't think it's Chinese control. I think you've got 60%
Who cares?
U.S. investment.
China owns a mass media operation in the United States to 170 million people. The fact that I can get a congressman or another prominent personality to defend Chinese interests in the United States terrifies me. I feel like any member of Congress should be like, yeah, China shouldn't own a mass media in the United States. There's no argument for it.
I
That's why it
imagine
passed
when the Soviet Union still existed and if they owned a broadcast network. I mean, right now
RT.
Yeah, RT is banned. There's I believe there's an Iranian network that's banned. So I don't think that the TikTok ban is that much of a different animal than banning something like RT or whatever.
I think the difference is it's a U.S. subsidiary, and if there was actually evidence that you pass a law saying if there's criminal liability, if there is interference by the Chinese party. Now you may put TikTok in a situation that they have to shut down if the Chinese Communist Party is demanding to do something and the executives are facing criminal penalties in the United States. But I think we went to the solution of shutting it down. And I think a lot of people view it as, well, they're shutting it down because we're saying things on the app, whether it's on Palestine or whether it's anti-vaccine or whether it's speech that the establishment doesn't like. I mean, Donald Trump is very popular on that app. He was more popular than Kamala Harris on
Only
the app.
recently, and only after he said he wanted to ban the app because of it was biased and censorious. And we were on TikTok to tens of thousands of followers, 2 accounts, my personal one and the show, and we largely agreed. There's no argument for China to own any piece of mass media, no matter how big or small. We have to have mass media in our national interest. They banned us arbitrarily for breaking no rules. This clearly shows, in my opinion, that if you speak out against their interests, they will kick you off the platform.
They kicked you off? I didn't know
They
that.
absolutely did, and no recourse. And we weren't. There's no path by which we can say, hey, we're a fairly moderate show. We don't do anything crazy. We sit down with people and we have conversations like this. And
no, you shouldn't be on. I'm happy to push. You shouldn't be censored from that platform.
Well, the issue is we have researchers pointing out that in the app, for instance, they use Java. They inject Java to keylog when you're using a web. When you open links through the app, I should say the reporting states, maybe it's wrong, that they inject a keylogger. That means if the evidence that we have of data collection means the only way I can really use that app is if I buy a brand new phone and do nothing with it, which is why we largely don't want to go near it. Now, we do know that American apps have CIA interest in things like that. But hey, if the CIA stole my info, I could FOIA request some of these things. A journalist could go after it. We could file lawsuits. I don't have that recourse with China.
I think that the issue is never the issue. I think that the U.S. government doesn't like competition in collecting Americans' data. And I think that if it was really about spying, Chinese spying, you had Eric Swalwell, who was sleeping with a spy. You had Dianne Feinstein, who had a Chinese spy driver for 20 years. You had Janet Yellen. I'm just saying they're targeting certain people. You had Janet Yellen, who just had her computer hacked by the Chinese. Then we have the open border with the Chinese nationals coming through there. We found there was largely a lot of Chinese nationals, but that wasn't a problem. But TikTok, this whole ban stuff was happening under Joe Biden with the open border. Well, China is coming over the border and God knows who. But I think that the issue is never quite the issue, but it opens up the door for your issue, for your issue, for your issue.
The issue is clearly Israel. The Democrats did not want to ban this until after October 7th. And we have this story from Axios, which we highlight all the time. It appears that there was an intentional change, and maybe it's not, but it appears either because the algorithm does change or because someone changed it. It appears the algorithm changed to massively promote pro-Palestine content. Now, I am not saying one way or the other, pro-Israel, pro-Palestine. I am saying that as soon as this happened, American foreign policy interests became threatened, and Democrats and Republicans got on board to ban it.
I actually agree with Mitt Romney and Tony Blinken had a conversation where Romney basically says what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was the threat to the fear among both parties was that young people were being indoctrinated through trickery into opposing Israel. By all means, you're allowed to hate Israel. I am not saying otherwise. I'm just saying so you can argue their concern was protecting Israel, not stopping manipulation, but it was this action that triggered it.
So you had said the Democrats weren't on board until...
They were not.
Okay, so are the Democrats largely pro-Israel?
What do you mean?
So you said the Democrats weren't on board.
The Democrats are largely pro-Israel, yes.
Okay, yes, I didn't know that. So can I ask something without maybe risking canceling myself? Did Jonathan Greenblatt really say we have a TikTok problem?
I don't know if he said that specifically, but I'm pretty sure the ADL very much was posting saying TikTok is a problem.
Okay.
And this was the core reason. And there were pro-Israel groups and pro-Jewish groups that were lobbying TikTok saying there's a lot of anti-Semitic content. So the issue largely comes down in this area with there's a lot of people who just hate Israel and hate Jews. And of course they latch onto this and they say they're only banning TikTok to protect Jews or whatever. And I'm like, make any argument you want. The reality is Donald Trump in 2020 signed an executive order to ban TikTok. The concern was that TikTok was heavily biased against conservatives. People were getting banned like crazy. If you had even the slightest moderate opinion, they would delete the content, ban you.
What do you think made him change his mind, other than he's
Donald
now
Trump?
popular? Yeah.
That's it. I think, well, there's a few things. Kellyanne Conway, I believe it's been reported she's been lobbying on behalf of TikTok. They got a powerful right-wing billionaire as an investor. I could be wrong. Is it Jeff Yass? Am I wrong about that? There have been,
They do have, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of prominent conservatives have been hired to lobby on behalf of TikTok. There's a couple of reasons I see for it. One, obviously getting a paycheck will sway a lot of people's motivations. I do see this masterful manipulative move that was just played where TikTok pretended to shut down and then pretended Trump brought him back. That's not what happened.
Right.
The ban, as of right now, we checked, in the Google Play Store, it says looking for TikTok, downloads are paused. It's not back, even with Trump's executive order.
What about an Apple? Is it on the App Store?
I believe it's still gone, but I don't have an Apple phone.
Is that a separate issue though? Whether or not Apple wants to bring it back, is that separate of TikTok coming back?
So TikTok was never obligated to shut down their service. Is it gone? They decided they would shut down in protest, and the rumor was they wanted to shock 170 million Americans. And so they shut down with a message saying, due to U.S. law, we're shutting down, but hopefully Trump can save us. And then I think within a matter of hours, by the next day or whatever, they said, yay, Trump saved us. But Trump hadn't actually done anything. So why Trump may be advocating for TikTok now is that move resulted in people like James Charles with 30 some odd million followers saying begrudgingly, am I MAGA now? Trump just saved TikTok? Oh, heavens me. It was masterful manipulation beyond what we've seen from the narrative machine. That's a huge motivating factor for Trump to utilize it.
I agree with that.
Perhaps Trump then later on says, my executive order didn't do anything anyway, and we don't like TikTok. Perhaps he forces some kind of co-American investment, so American interests are monitoring at the same time. But I think the lobbying played a role, the American interest investors played a role, and I think that they're all largely wrong, though I will acknowledge the masterful PR stunt that TikTok did was masterfully pulled off and hugely beneficial to Donald Trump.
I also think that people like Jake Paul and all those other influencers that he was doing shows with, I think that they actually had an impact on Donald Trump as well, to be honest with you.
And Donald Trump had come out and he'd said that he wanted a little bit of government into, like, maybe the solution is adding a little bit of government. No, that is not the solution.
Imagine what happens. We thought it was bad enough that you had federal feds
in the Slack
chats, or the Biden administration reaching out to big tech saying, we don't like this, we want this banned, we want this removed, be it Trump or whoever else you're mad at for doing these things. Imagine if the government owned outright a piece of social media. There's two ways to see it. The first is they will surreptitiously be censoring Americans without them knowing. However, government ownership of any degree does put the First Amendment in play and may guarantee free speech on the platform. If Donald Trump successfully gets TikTok with U.S. ownership, like directly under the government, I don't know how I feel about that.
It goes against his executive order that he just signed or is going to sign.
That was not his proposition.
It says I'm going to take.
He's saying U.S. investors would own it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I do think it's fair to say that there should be enough U.S. control that you should have some redress if you're getting kicked off the platform, like you would on X or Facebook or any other social media platform. And so, hopefully there's a resolution here that gets it in a better place.
I think they'd have to open source. If China wants to remain involved, the algorithm must be open source and viewable by anybody, and there has to be direct recourse for censorship.
Would you have transparency for American companies, though? Facebook, nope. Instagram? No.
So I think the companies should be, but I think as the law prescribes, a foreign entity operating mass media, there's going to be certain limitations on that. I think, we can look at Facebook, X, YouTube, and say they're heavily biased, and they have been for a long time. They've censored a variety of ideas. And there are problems with government involvement, as Trump just signed this executive order, and we've had leaked documents, we've had the Twitter files, et cetera. It should be that Americans are allowed to argue with each other. If an American starts a company and says, this is my view and how I want to moderate, so long as they aren't violating Section 230, I say, okay, fine. But we will challenge you because we want to make sure you're abiding by the law. If a foreign country, especially an adversary, wants to operate mass media in the United States, I say, you got to be completely transparent. We get to see your code because we don't trust you. Americans trying to sway Americans and playing political games is what Americans do. China doing it to us is an act of war.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think that there has to be some safeguard against Chinese manipulation of the algorithm. I'm not going to argue that China should be allowed to do that on mass media. I mean, it's one thing if they would have a newspaper or some publication, but on mass media, you can't have that kind of manipulation. The question is, can you structure this in a way that can achieve that without shutting down the app? And I think you can, and I think the law was overbroad. I mean, they rushed to do this. They rushed to do it partly because of what you're saying. What was happening with the algorithmic amplification of pro-Palestinian voices, and again, I support the U.S.-Israel relationship. But I think that was part of the motivation.
Well, if China has this impact and can push back, and I think the U.S. government had to move quickly if they were going to do this at all. Because what we're already seeing, if our discussion is illustrative of anything, is that China is working both sides and trying to prevent this in any way that they can. And China is usually, Trump came into office and made waves because he said the United States is not going to be taken advantage of. One of the things we constantly saw under both Republican and Democratic administrations in the past was that the globalist consensus often led to America getting screwed and China stealing our stuff. And now, if we actually want to take a stance against China, sometimes you have to have a broad instrument that, you want something a little more tweaky and specific, which I appreciate. But sometimes you have to just go full bore. Otherwise, you're going to be taken advantage of.
I think Trump got the politics on this right compared to our party. Our party said no to the tariffs. Basically, we were running ads saying no tariffs in Pennsylvania. It's going to raise your taxes. And that was telling all these auto workers and steel workers that we were basically fine with the jobs going to China. I'm not saying that there isn't an argument against blanket tariffs, but basically we're against tariffs and we were for banning this app. Trump was like, most people like this app. I'll be for the app, and most people don't want their jobs going there. I'll be for tariffs. So he got the politics right on it, in my view.
Let me ask you one more. We're going to go to super chats in a second, but just one last question to clarify: do you believe that Trump does have the legal authority to pause this law?
I think he believes he does. So what he is doing, in my view, I have to look at it, is you can find that TikTok is in compliance with making a good faith effort to resolve the issue on divestiture. And then the way divestiture is defined is very technical, right? It doesn't mean it has to be a U.S. interest. How do you define it? So I think what Trump is going to do is he's going to find basically TikTok in compliance. Now,
but the penalty is not for TikTok. It's for Amazon, Google, Apple, Oracle, etc.
Right, but not if there's a pause. Then and if TikTok is in compliance, then the penalties don't apply. Now, you can have a lawsuit saying that Donald Trump has found it in compliance in violation of the law. Like Congress has set certain standards and Trump is just finding it in compliance. And my guess is Google and Apple may be cautious. They may think, yeah, Trump's going to find it in compliance, but it's not really in compliance. And then the other small technicality is the ban actually took place and Trump is there a day later. So it would have had to have happened a day before, but courts may defer to him.
I think there's two big things at play with these tech companies. One is the disclosure. They're publicly traded companies. So if they choose to act in violation of the law simply because of an executive order, that's a risk they'll have to disclose. And then there's also their insurance companies, which may not allow them to take any action regardless of executive authority. So that's why I think right now Google, has Apple reinstated it? They have not, have they?
No, they haven't.
Yeah, and neither has Google. And I think it's largely because they don't want to issue a declaration to their shareholders that we've decided to violate the TikTok ban because Trump said it'll be fine for a couple months. And I think their insurance companies told them, hey, if you decide to break the law, regardless of what Trump said, we're not going to insure you because that's risk on us.
Yeah.
Then you got reinsurers. And I'm willing to bet that Google and Facebook, Apple, they probably got like 300 different insurance companies across the board. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.